Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to our Sunday night live stream. Lots to discuss on the show today. Main topics will probably be, of course, reviewing the loss the Longhorns have, their second loss of the season to the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC title game. We'll talk about that and all of your questions, comments from it. Also, we'll get to the upcoming college football playoff and the seeding for the Longhorns. They will be facing the Clemson Tigers in the first matchup in the college football playoff. We'll talk a little bit about that. We got ways to go before that. We can get into it as well. And what is happening actually tomorrow. CJ Vogel, obviously very knowledgeable about all things recruiting or talent acquisition, as I like to call it these days, and the transfer portal window opens up tomorrow officially. So we'll talk about that because there could be a lot of Longhorn-related news as it relates to the transfer portal. So all of that, we'll get into it. Of course, you guys drive the show. Whatever you want to talk about, hit us up, questions, comments. We'll try to address as many of them as we can. Super chats jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at any time. But, of course, first and foremost, I'm going to give my man CJ's thoughts. Of course, the young prodigy, lifetime Longhorn. We'll get his thoughts about what he saw from his rewatch. I'm sure. I don't know how many times he's rewatched it of the Texas loss to Georgia. A lot of disappointment the second time rewatching it for me, CJ. I was even more disappointed than he first watched because you realize how many opportunities were squandered for Texas to win the SEC championship. Georgia definitely has the heart of a champion. Nobody's denying that. And there was a lot of the things that Georgia was able to execute and impose on Texas. But there was certainly an opportunity for Texas to put themselves in a position to put their foot on the throat of Georgia at one point in this game, and they just didn't do it.
Yeah, they definitely didn't do it. And the rewatch is even more frustrating, right? Because you see the first half domination. That's exactly what it was, right? They dominated the first half. They dominated in yards. They dominated in time of possession, first downs, time of, field control. They did a tremendous job in the first half. They just didn't capitalize when they needed to. And look, I remember sitting there thinking field goals aren't going to beat Georgia. You got to punch it in for 7 at some point, and Texas wasn't able to do it. It was unfortunate, again, because that's a game that you shouldn't lose if you're Texas, right? You have a great defense, a veteran offensive line, a quarterback in its third year, play caller who's supposed to be able to capitalize. And I thought, first and foremost, we'll talk about Quinn. I thought Quinn played well. I did. I thought Quinn 360 yards against a team that he just got benched by, about 6 weeks ago? He wasn't perfect in the red zone, but for the most part, most of those red zone calls were fades to the outside, corner routes to the outside. When have we seen Quinn hit those? Not this year. Not very often ever. So that's kind of where I'm sitting saying, where could Texas have been better? I wasn't necessarily pleased with some of those, final possession drive play calls as Texas was near in the red zone. You're playing for touchdown, and Texas was playing for a touchdown, right? You had the fade ball to Ryan Wingo, which gets called for DPI, and then Texas goes right back to Ryan Wingo again on a fade ball. I'm sitting there thinking, man, this kind of looks like Adonai Mitchell against Washington, and I wasn't necessarily pleased with that. I didn't like the double fake middle screen to Gunnar Helm, which didn't look like a screen. I don't know if Gunnar Helm didn't know the ball was supposed to go to him, but Quinn gets sacked there. You got to call a timeout. You lose 6 yards, and now you're backing up field position when you're on the 14. I hated that play. It was ugly, but ultimately it comes down to this. 11 penalties, 6 drops, 2 missed field goals, 3 turnovers. That's pretty ugly. You're not going to win really any football games if that's how you're playing against a team like Georgia or, Rod, any of these teams coming up in the college football playoff. Right.
Sorry about that. They didn't make enough clutch plays in critical moments. I agree with you. That's basically what it came down to. And I'm with you. Ultimately, for Sark, he's got to figure out why his formula, for whatever reason, his formula to win doesn't match up well with Kirby Smart's formula. And that's something now we've seen twice. Sark's offense, sometimes it fails to find solutions to some of the problems that, Kirby Smart's defense can present, because a lot of things looked very similar to the first matchup. Pass protection issues, issues with obviously being able to get a push in the running game. I thought they ran it better. And of course, they made more plays in the passing game, of course, in the first half. But ultimately, they couldn't capitalize on them, like you said, especially in the red zone. And yes, we'll talk about Bert Arbin. Bert Arbin's been inconsistent all year, and that, of course, materialized in the championship game as well. Texas all of a sudden has red zone issues, and I don't know when it happened. And at the beginning of the season, this is one of the best red zone teams in the country. And now here in the last, it feels like the last 3 or 4 games, those red zone issues have crept up again, CJ. We were just talking about early in the season how they were one of the best red zone offenses in the country. And now the last 3 weeks, the A&M game was glaring issues because you had turnovers in the red zone. But once again, issues in the red zone. Is this something now going into the college football playoff that Longhorn fans should be concerned about? Because it was something that you could argue was your biggest liability last season. What held you back from ultimately winning a championship, even though you got to the college football playoff? Are we talking about now Texas having red zone issues, or is that a Quinn issue that now is happening in the red zone?
Yeah, I think it's a full team issue. A&M maybe a little bit more singled out on Quinn because it was a bad throw. It was a late decision to Ryan Wingo, which went for the pick 6. It was a fumble in which he was trying to slide and give himself up. That's tough. That's more Quinn. I think in this game, it was more full offense, right? And I say that because where was the run game? Where was the idea that, hey, you just watch Arch Manning become a pretty integral part of that offense against A&M. We just watched Haynes King run for 110 yards against Georgia 2 weeks ago. Where was that package? Where was any sort of offense outside of Quinn trying to hit a tight window throw somewhere in the end zone? There wasn't much, right? And again, I'm looking at fades and corner routes to guys in the end zones thinking, okay, that guy might have had a step. That throw could have been a little bit better, but when have we seen that ever be completed in Quinn Ewers' time here at Texas? It's not his strength. So for Texas specifically, if you're going to want to win these games, it has to start with establishing some sort of run game. And you had a 15-yard run. That was your longest one of the day, but you take that away. You had 18 rush attempts for 36 yards. That's 2 yards a pop there. That's not great. Running backs, offensive line, center and guards got eaten alive in the run game. They're consistently blown backward. And Rod, I know that there has to be some sort of complementary aspect when it comes to the offense, right? But when you're consistently losing 8 yards, or was it 15 tackles for loss, whether it be sacks or rush attempts that lose yards there, at some point you kind of have to just say, you know what, this is where we're at. Yeah. And to move the rock in the middle of the field, what was working so well? Crossers, slants, digs. It was the most slant routes I've ever seen Quinn Ewers throw. And I thought that was the best way that they were moving the rock. I love the way that was kind of the adjustment that Sarkisian went with. But you have to stick with that if that's what's working. The outside the number fade routes, wasn't a fan.
Yeah, I know they threw how many deep balls? According to Pro Football Focus, I think it was 4 deep balls they threw, but then obviously there was the 1 PI. So I guess that's 5. Technically, you were 2 or 4, right? That Matthew Golden deep ball, like both of them actually were Matthew Golden deep balls. One thing I was disappointed in, and I talked about this on In-Game Live Watch, that Sark was, I thought was really, in my opinion, brilliant at starting out with, was targets to motion. Man, they had more targets to motion in the first half of that game they had in any game all season long. And he was like 7 or 10. That 50-yarder to Matthew Golden, target to motion, that 32-yarder was. I mean, it held a lot of big plays actually early on in the first half were targets to motion, and you only had 3 of them in the second half. Now I know you didn't have the ball as much, but you only had 3 of them in the second half. 2 of them came on the game time drive. So Sark knew it worked. It's just that he kind of went away from it in the second half. That was one of those things. I'm with you that it was a little perplexing. And I was like, it was working. Keep going with it.
Keep feeding.
Be.
To your point, Rod. There was a concept or a route kind of switch up that we had not seen so far with Texas, and it was the route to motion. And it starts with, the last 2 weeks, we've really seen DeAndre Moore line up way outside.
Yeah, I saw that.
Kind of be that long, kind of motion guy onto the interior. He picks up a lot of speed. There was a 3rd and 5, I believe, that was converted on Moore on a crossing route. And then the next third down, they went back to that same motion. And instead of the crossing route, it was a whip.
Yep, they whipped.
So it was just playing off of that. That was great. I love seeing that because you hadn't seen a whip route this year.
No, I mean, yeah, you love that from Xavier Worthy used to love it. A little whip right in the end zone. Use it in the red zone a lot. No, I'm with you. And they used it twice actually. They used it. The whip concept. It was like kind of a reverse whip. He did it from the outside in. It was a 3rd down early on in the game, empty formation. When they only used empty formation like twice, and it converted. Maybe he caught it. It was like a 22-yard gain and ran it upfield. So what worked really well, and Sark I think knew this because there were several examples of it. When he would use things like the whip route, things that would use Georgia's aggression against them, right? Georgia's really aggressive, and they're just a fast flow. They identified, and when you can use that against them, a double move, things like that, it actually, I think Texas had a lot of success on those. That touchdown to DeAndre Moore was a stalk slant. Some people call it a bluff slant.
That was a pretty play.
Yeah, it's a beautiful play. Remember, Sark tried it earlier, though, not that earlier, but he tried the stock block and go earlier with him, ended up being a penalty. So Sark knew, listen, these guys are so fast. Sometimes I can't handle it. Like my plays take too long to develop. I need misdirection. I got a lot going on. Sometimes I need sleight of hand. And with all that happening, sometimes you need some time, just like that helm play you were just talking about, where they had he had the play fake, and then they had the misdirection, and essentially they were waiting on Helm was waiting to clear. It was like a screen for Helm, but he delayed block and delayed release, and then he was going to go downfield, except he didn't run a route. And if he wanted to run a route, I think it would have worked out better. But he thought he was going to be just wide open, and so did Quinn. That's why Quinn faked it, and he faked it that way, and then he was like, "Oh, he's not wide open," and he just had to eat it because these are predetermined reads for Sark. That's why I think a lot of the targets to motion, they're predetermined reads. He actually threw an interception on a target to motion. Why? Because it's supposed to be open. It's like Sark has told me, like, that's your number one read. That guy is going to be open. And it a lot of time it is. Like I told you, they had a lot of success in it. But I think ultimately for Quinn, that was a predetermined read too. And when it was a predetermined read that's not open, like some of those screens, I mean, it's SOL. There's nothing you can really do.
Yeah, I totally agree. And look, at some point you have to give Georgia credit, right? That defense.
Oh man,
7 sacks, 15 tackles for loss. They played good ball, and look, for whatever reason, Texas, Georgia, they just don't match up well, right? Whether it be the edges, whether it be the interior, whether it be the running game. But you have to find ways to be a balanced offense, and Texas was not near a balanced offense. And when they were moving the rock, it was penalties. It was an offensive pass interference. It was a holding. Texas had 4 holdings on Saturday night. These are big penalties, Rod. And, I remember sitting there, it was 8 penalties for 80 yards in the first half. And then you look at it long picture-wise or big picture-wise after the game, 11 penalties for about 104 yards. Mm-hmm. I don't care who you play. That's not easy to overcome. And what I wanted to mention here, and I tweeted it this morning, this to me was where Texas lost the football game. It was 3rd downs. Because that ultimately stalled every possession for Texas, whether it be the penalties, the lost yardage on rush plays, sacks, whatever you want to call it. Texas was, I believe, 4 of 18 on 3rd downs. Pretty ugly. And when you have 18 3rd down attempts and your average distance to go is 11 yards, good luck against the Georgia defense. Here's the tweet I had earlier. Look, you needed to go 9+ yards to convert on 10 of your 18 attempts. You only had 4 3rd downs where you were in between what would be considered short to go, which is 1 to 4 yards. I don't care who you play moving forward. That's not a recipe for success. And I actually thought Quinn was pretty good, 9 of 15 for 178. But you had the 2 picks. And guess where the 2 picks were? One was right at the sticks on a 3rd and 9, and the other was on 3rd and 17 where what do you think they were going to do on a 3rd and 17 besides throw it all the way deep? Just pick up something, try to flip the field. Obviously, it was a sticks route for both. Didn't work out. So predictability against the Georgia defense on 18 third down attempts, and you have 16 dropbacks to pass. Yeah, that's where the pass rush is going to eat you alive.
Yep. That's a great point, CJ. Right about that. I mean, they had no running game at all. I thought they actually ran it. There were time stretches where I felt like the running game was starting to, have some success. But every time it did, that was either a penalty that would put them behind the chains, or there was a negative play that would put them behind the chains. And then, like you said, then they would be in a predictable passing situation, and that's when Georgia would tee off. But Texas still was able to make some plays, especially in the first half in those situations. So it was frustrating because it's like a movie where there's a sequel, of course. All right, we're talking about the sequel here, the second time these teams played. And man, there was too much that reminded me of the original, with the inability, the Texas running game, which was non-existent. So they were a one-dimensional football team. Too many, tackles for loss and negative plays. The penalties for Texas, a lot of self-inflicted wounds, and just missed opportunities. And that's what this game kind of was a little bit different, some missed opportunities. But in terms of the matchup, the Texas offense versus that Georgia defense, it looked a lot like the first time, unfortunately.
It did.
It looked a lot like the first time. They did make more plays, though, in the first half. I thought Sark should have stuck with a lot of those concepts that worked for him, but we'll get back to that. All right, let's hit some of the super chats. I know you guys have been throwing them out there. We appreciate all the super chats. We'll hit them, and let's start with Bevo's keeper. Bert Auburn needs to hit the portal, just saying. Bert Auburn's not having a good year. I mean, it's he's been inconsistent at best, and I think that was on display. I think that was pretty much the storyline for him in that game versus Georgia. You can't depend on Bert Auburn, especially, man, that right hash is troublesome for him.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate. And, it's a bit unfortunate for Bert as well, because you make your first two and things are moving in positive direction. You line up for your third, you kick your third, and it goes in. And then there's a flag for a false start. You back it up 5, and then you miss it. And again, if that kick might have been at the same position in the 5 yards up front, the kick maybe goes in. It goes back to Texas shooting itself in the foot with penalties. And Bert's got to make those kicks. He knows that. No one's got to sit there and tell Bert that, that's a kick Texas needs to make. He knows that. But I don't think Texas has another option that they would feel comfortable throwing out there to kick with right now. Bert's going to be the guy, whether Texas fans like it or not. I just don't think that there's anybody else on this roster right now. Fortunately for Texas, I mean, look, you got a good quarterback, you got a good offensive line, you got a good play caller. If some of these decisions come up later in the playoff, I think you'd be more aggressive on 4th downs.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think for Texas, ultimately, that's why we didn't early on in the season. We were talking about how some people had Bert Auburn as a preseason All-American, and the joke, and now it's not a joke, not the funny kind, where it was that, oh man, Texas scoring so much in the red zone, they don't even need Bert Auburn anymore. Poor Bert Auburn's not even getting any work because they're so good in the red zone. And since they've had their struggles now in the red zone, Bert Auburn's getting more work. And Bert Auburn's all of a sudden become inconsistent. In addition to now you're inconsistent in the red zone, and Bert Auburn's inconsistent as well now. And that's to me a bad recipe going into the college football playoff. So they got to figure it out, the red zone issues right now. And they got to, I think the hope was that all of these things that early on in the season that we knew that Texas, the offensive line has been, and at times, and they're Joe Moore Award winning, a Joe Moore Award finalist. So it's a really good offensive line. But we've seen them struggle, right? At times and at stretches, at least in the run game. But we've also seen them impose their will. We've seen the passing game be the identity of the offense at times and be really explosive and prolific. And then we've seen stretches where the passing game seems to, because Quinn may struggle or the pass protection may struggle, it seems like they hit a bit of a lull, or, maybe there is some, with the passing game, just some inconsistency there too. And then now we're seeing the red zone also kind of go through the same thing. And I don't know if we're ever going to get to the point. Hell, we're obviously 13 games in, where we see it all come together, where all of those elements, the passing game, the run game, Quinn, the offensive line, the red zone offense, all play at a really high level at the same time and peak at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was the hope, was that, oh man, the run game is starting to peak, and maybe we'll get primetime Quinn along with the run game, along with, pass protection and the offensive line playing at a high level. And then this offense will really start to, show that it can be, among a championship caliber offense, something we all can trust. And that's not going to happen. And maybe it's just Georgia, but the red zone issues, the third quarter issues, I think the Quinn, the Quinn inconsistency, all those things have been a problem before Georgia, not just against Georgia.
Yeah, and to your point, when are they going to put it together all together? When is that going to happen? You're getting to the point of no return now. Well, Texas did it in the second half or second quarter against Texas A&M. They look pretty damn good, right?
Really
but that's the issue, is that you get it for one quarter. You don't get it for a full half. You don't get it for a full game. If Texas can play to that level for a full game, I don't know, Rod, if there's a team that can beat them.
I agree there.
And that's the issue, that you see the ceiling, but you don't see it consistently enough to a point where you say, that's the team that I know is going to stand up and perform well. Because, again, that second quarter against A&M, Quinn was on fire. You scored 2 touchdowns. You ended up going in the halftime 17-0. Maybe could have been a little bit more. Defense was lights out. You're playing complementary football. You're owning the time of possession. You're running the football. There weren't many penalties. That's a great football. That might have been the best Texas had looked the entire year. Was that second quarter, kind of last quarter and a half of the first half against Texas A&M. And again, I thought they looked really good in the first half. Defensively, you allowed 54 yards.
Yeah.
You should be winning. And they were. The issue is you had 270 yards that amounted for 6 points because penalties, holdings, sacks, inaccurate throws into the red zone. That holds the team back.
Yep. I said I wasn't worried, actually, after watching the first half, even though it was close, because I thought Texas controlled the game. And especially when Carson Beck went down. And
Can I ask you about that?
Yeah.
What does Texas win that game with Beck going the entire way?
Yeah, it was kind of like the Spencer Rattler, Spencer Rattler game. The Texas, remember they had prepared so well. The game plan was so effective versus Spencer Rattler that when Caleb Williams came into the game, it was almost a negative for Texas because obviously they didn't have a game plan as thorough for Caleb Williams. And then basically your game plan was so good it got him benched, but it also ended up working against you because Caleb Williams was a different monster altogether. I felt like that in this game where, not that he was benched, but Carson Beck got hurt because your pass rush was getting to him and you got a chance to hit him I think ultimately for Texas, you had a really effective game plan for a Carson Beck-led offense. And then the backup comes into the game and, Texas did not have the answers quick enough defensively. Yeah. And it reduced the running game, the quarterback +1 in the running game, which isn't it. This proves the point for a lot of Longhorn fans who want to say you should have expanded the arch package, right? First, especially versus Georgia. Why? Look at what Georgia did to your defense with a quarterback that could barely throw.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just a +1 in the run game. And look what it did to the run game against your defense. You got a defense just as good as Georgia's defense, if not better. It's a really good defense. Now, I don't know if you got the individual dogs Georgia got on the defensive front because those guys are going to be drafted really high. That's a different discussion for a different day. But statistically, you're on the same level with Georgia.
You're there.
Right? And they had a backup quarterback that came into the game. Arch Manning's your backup quarterback, came into the game, +1 in the running game, and look what it did to the traditional running game. Look how it juiced it. And then look what a problem it was for your defense to account for the +1 in the running game. Your defense is as athletic, as smart as your defense is, as they've been all season long. And you've been good versus dual threat quarterbacks too.
Yeah.
But when you put them into the game when a team did not necessarily, when they did not draft their entire game plan, all right, for that quarterback, it trust me, that change of pace and that, that change, that tendency breaker, it can be a huge advantage for you. It was versus A&M. You just watched it. I mean, you scored a touchdown because of versus A&M. So the fact that he didn't expand it, I'm not saying you should play Arch and bench Quinn. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think the Arch package should have been 7, 8 plays.
I totally agree.
I think you could have done that.
Red zone efficient. Especially. I mean, again, we just watched Haynes King run for 110 yards.
Yeah. So, man, we got to back up, run. They just kept running empty formation. They're going.
Yeah, as predictable as it can be.
Yeah, it's just.
They spread them out wide, and you look at it and you say, oh, there's nobody in the middle of the field for Texas. What's going to happen here?
Yeah. Guys, they kept running the empty formation, and they'd run the draw. And here's the thing about it. What was the longest run play for Texas against Georgia in the first game? Empty formation, Arch Manning, 21-yard run. Because empty formation is just tough to cut. It's tough to defend, period. I give damn what level of football you playing at. It stresses the defense out. And then you're telling me I got to put a spy on that run, on that quarterback too, to account for it. That's going to make me even more vulnerable on the back end and at a numbers disadvantage on the back end. Defense, they did it on Texas. Ran for a couple of first downs doing that. So for Sark, I think that was a bit of a miscalculation. All right, getting back to the super chats here. How about this one from A. Mars? It says, scoring plays on yours. We know each play has multiple routes. Yours panic throws. These plays are effectively throwaways. It's execution problem. I don't know the playbook. I study it, A. Mars. So I don't know if there are option routes. There's no doubt there are option routes. I don't know how many of them and whose fault it would be on those option routes. Because I think that, maybe that A&M game, remember the one they talk about with Bond, that he missed the one, that Bond was basically running a vertical route and Quinn threw it to like a deep out route right at the sticks. And that's one of those, I think, what you're talking about, examples of an option route where he has the option to run vertical. If look at the leverage of the defensive back and how DB is playing them, but the DB was inside leverage, eyes on the quarterback, and his hips were open to the quarterback. All of that, those things you're reading, and the leverage of the DB, and he was playing off, almost bailing, said it should have been that Isaiah Bond should have ran the out right at the sticks. If he was probably playing like a bump and run technique inside, then they probably would have said, hey, check the vertical. Or if he was outside technique and if he was outside technique and say he wasn't, his hips wide open to the quarterback, they might have said, hey, man, take him vertical. So the option routes, it depends on the offense and what the keys that the quarterback and the wide receiver are reading at the time in terms of the coverage pre-snap and then what they see, the technique of the defensive back that's playing. I don't know all that. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't. I know it changes from offense to offense.
Yeah. Look, a lot of it, whenever you get into the red zone, there were times yesterday where it was a one read play, right? It was, try to hit Matthew Golden on the shakes route. That's the guy that has had success beating one-on-one coverage. That's the guy that you trust and rely on the most of this wide receiver core. If you're Quinn Ewers, you're going to go back to him because you don't have much time to go from 1 to 2 to 3, especially in the tight red when George is bringing pressure. My issue is, and I guess this is more for the outbreaking routes and corner routes, because, again, Quinn's not been great on corner routes this year. I almost wonder, Rod, if he has a predetermined idea of where the route's expected to go versus where the route actually goes. And there's where I look specifically to the DeAndre Moore kind of slot fade to the back pylon. Mm-hmm. Quinn throws that to the back pylon when you got a shoulder opened up to to the front pylon or whatever.
Yeah. And no, I got you.
It wasn't like it was where his route was headed, but where Quinn, I think, anticipated the route to go originally.
Yeah.
And look, you can get away with that at times when you're playing a team that doesn't have the guys, the athletes in the back seven. But when those windows get tighter, you can't just guess, right? You can't just anticipate where this is going. You have to You have to diagnose it. And I think that's where Quinn a little bit gets in trouble sometimes in the tight red.
I think he's also trying to avoid interceptions and turnovers. So he's always thinking, I'm going to throw it to where my guy can get it or nobody can get it.
Yeah, that too.
And instead of, like you said, kind of ripping it and putting it in that window, which he's got the accuracy to do. JS Hooper here says, thank you for the super chat, by the way. Says, played well compared to what himself in the first game. He didn't play well as Haynes King versus Georgia. The standard should be higher. Yeah, I agree. But that I would say that the metrics say that Quinn played well. If you want to look at objective metrics, Pro Football Focus had a really high score. I believe they had him at an 80 plus
86.
grade. That's a really high grade. They had him at an 86. I know. I'm not, trust me, JS Hooper. I'm sure you probably got some issues with that. And I will admit, sometimes I got issues with Pro Football Focus too. But when I went back and rewatched it, I thought ultimately, yes, Quinn, there were some questionable decisions, no doubt about that. Especially the interception to Matthew Golden on that comeback route. That was not open. Like, that was not open. I don't know. That to me was him deciding before the snap that's where he was going to throw the football, and he didn't even throw it to the outside. He threw it to the inside. So it was a bad throw and a bad decision. So yes, he had some questionable decisions, but ultimately, man, the pass protection, there's no run game for Quinn. The pass protection was questionable. I would say at least more than half the time. You had issues, leaky pass protection. So there wasn't a lot of help for Quinn. And then I think Sark in the first half, I love a lot of what Sark did in the first half. I don't think Sark really, helped Quinn out with the play calling either. I'm not sure he gave him a lot of a schematic advantage in that game. Sark, I thought at times lost the chess match between him and Kirby Smart or Schumann, their defensive coordinator.
I agree. And again, this is my point on Quinn Ewers. You threw for 360. You moved the ball up and down the field. The red zone stalled out, but you know where you would have had success or help in the red zone? A run game. 100%. You didn't have that. You didn't have the offensive line that could lead you into the end zone in the red zone. You just didn't have it. Not yesterday night. That's for sure. And here's the thing. I know a lot of folks like to look at, well, it was just a bunch of empty stats. Oh, you don't really do anything unless you win the football game. You realize if it wasn't for Quinn Ewers, Texas would have never crossed midfield. Where else were they crossing midfield? It wasn't the catch and run. It wasn't yards after the catch. Quinn Ewers, I thought, had a lot of really high leverage throws on Saturday night over the middle of the field, the deep crossing routes. You hit it multiple times. Matthew Golden, DeAndre Moore, I thought had a really good game. There were a couple drops. They had 6 drops. Again, that means the ball is where it's supposed to be. And who knows if that ball was dropped? Who knows if that ball was deflected out? The deep ball I'm talking about to Matthew Golden in the end zone, Rod.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the best balls Quinn's had this season. Right through the hands, and again, maybe it was deflected, maybe it was knocked out. That's a good ball. And to your point, it was only in a spot where his player can make a play on it. So yeah, the 2 interceptions, not pretty, but that's what happens when it's 3rd and 9 and it's 3rd and 17 and you're desperately in a passing situation to move the sticks and create some sort of advantage for you in the field position game. Because look, Georgia's got good players, right? You give Georgia a short field, we know what happens when that happens. We saw it a month and a half ago. You give Georgia 40 yards, they're going to put points on the board.
Mm-hmm.
You try to make a play, sometimes they just have good players too. Quinn played well, and I'm tired of the standard that, he has to make every single play. Name me a quarterback in college football right now that's making 100% of their completions. There's not a single one, especially against a Georgia team.
Against Georgia.
Not against a Georgia
team. Not
against
Georgia.
And that's the other thing I wanted to mention. There's only one quarterback in the entire country that has played Georgia this year, Rod, that has more passing yards in a game than Quinn Ewers did last night. And it was Jalen Milroe in a game that they scored 41 points. Yeah. Basically just hucking it up to an all-world wide receiver, Ryan Williams, saying, go make a play. Texas tried to do that, and they did do that. Matthew Golden, again, some of the most impressive catches of the entire season.
Yep.
And that was on a play where Quinn Ewers evaded pressure, got outside the pocket, extended a play, and trusted his wide receiver to come down with a 50 play. So, yeah, should Quinn have played a little bit better? Probably. But at the end of the day, you had 30 yards of rushing. You got sacked 7 times. There were 11 penalties. It goes beyond Quinn Ewers here, folks.
Yeah, pick your reason. Like pick whatever reason you want, but it ain't all Quinn. Quinn could be one of them, but
you missed 2 field goals.
Yes. Come on, you got like 4, 5, 6 different things we can pick. Now, if you're upset that Quinn does not put the cape on, like Colt McCoy used to or Vince used to, then that is understandable. But think about what you're asking. You're asking for him to be, all-time great. And I'm not saying he's not good. He's really good, but all-time great is different. And yeah, to put the cape on in a crucial moment like that and put the team on your shoulders and just basically as a player, all right, even against Georgia, become unstoppable in that moment and be able to put the team on your shoulders. He did it in the Michigan game. I've seen there are times in the Bama game where you saw him kind of do that. Yeah. That's what I think Longhorn fans want. And they didn't see that. And they're basically blaming Quinn for not having that ability.
I thought he actually did a pretty good job of that. Just putting the cape on and going out to his level, right? Texas goes down 7 points. They get the ball back right after. The entire momentum switches to Georgia. That stadium was probably 75-25 dog fans. I thought it, especially when Gunnar Stockton came in, that place lit up for Georgia. He put a spark into that stadium. They're down 7 points. You were just up by 3 at halftime. Everything's going Georgia's direction. 5 plays, 75 yards, you find the end zone. Okay, you did the job. That's what you wanted to see. Next drive, you get an opportunity again. You're down by 3 this time. And what happens? You run for -2. You get sacked for -5. You're in 3rd and 17, you throw a pick. You got your lunch eaten, plain and simple. But you get the opportunity to go down the field one more time and to score a touchdown, to either win the game or force overtime. And what happens? He did exactly that. And could there have been a touchdown? Yeah, sure. We've talked about the play calling. We've talked about Quinn Ewers, whatever you want to say. But at the end of the day, he put his team in a position to extend the football game and to win the game. So regulation, I thought, sure, that back half of the game, Quinn did well. Touchdown drive, field goal drive, extended the game. You just got to be better. And that's where the frustration is. Again, here's another super chat from Oscar Rod. I'm a Quinn guy. The loss wasn't his fault, but he can't overcome the discipline. O-line play, kicker, and run game. We have to at least get Arch in more and pray he can pick up this offense. We talked about it. I totally agree. I think the Arch package would have helped Texas, especially in the high red.
Go look at the game they played versus Ole Miss. Go look at what Jackson Dart did. I think it was like 50-something yards rushing, but they were in crucial plays. Hell, go look at the game that they played. Of course, Haynes King, Georgia Tech, and what he did in the run game. I agree. I don't know how, for Sark, how he could watch that film and not think that there could be more ways to exploit that vulnerability within that Georgia defense. But hey, we were all wrong. We thought that would be expected. And that goes back to what I think about Sark. I don't think there were enough tendency breakers in this game. I think, in the big games, to win big games, you have to break tendency. There's so much preparation. And I don't know if there were enough of them. You had to play where a direct snap between the legs. That was great. You had the 31 personnel package early. Bobby pointed out there was a tackle over that was called back because of a penalty early in the game. But I just don't think there were enough ways for you to break tendency in this matchup. And I think ultimately that's what you got to do, especially against a team like Georgia that's well prepared and well coached. All right. Thank you for the super chat, Oscar. All right, getting back to it. Brody with the super chat. Thank you, Brody. CJ on here. How's I have the issues ranked? He said, how's I have the issues ranked? Or am I missing something? Penalties, Burt, Sark in the last 2 minutes in overtime. He wants you to rank the issues. Brody, can I add one for you about issues you should rank? Third quarter. Last 4 games, you've been outscored in the third quarter, I believe, something like 31-6. Something's going on in the third quarter with Texas. I don't know what the hell it is. I don't know what it is, but it's something going on. It's weird. It's strange. Yeah.
It's almost the reverse of the Golden State Warriors in their run, right? You always knew coming out of halftime they'd go on some big old 3-point scoring streak where they just blow teams out. And in fact, it eerily kind of mirrors that of 2021 Texas, where you went into halftime maybe up 10, and by the time you entered the fourth quarter, you're down by 4, and you're sitting there thinking, what the hell just happened? You go 3 and 3 and out, and you don't have a running game. But Brody, I agree. Look, penalties hurt. I would also throw in the lack of a run game, offensive line. That would be right there with you, because you know what would help Texas, and it absolutely did help Texas in the first half? Time of possession. And to Rod's point, third quarter, I think it was 12-3 in terms of minutes to Georgia there. So I agree. It goes penalties, one, clean that up. You're not 3rd and 17. Rod, I think there was a 3rd and 17, a 3rd and 16, a 3rd and 22, a 3rd and 26, and a 3rd and 27. You know how many Texas converted? None. You know why? Because that's pretty damn hard to do against a Georgia defense.
That is crazy. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat there, Brody. We appreciate it. All right, let's thank our sponsor, Rogue Shop, before we move on here. We appreciate them always being a part of the On Texas football family and supporting us. Rogue Shop bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. Make sure you use the promo code On Texas. You'll get a very special discount from our very special friends at Rogue Shop. They have it all from oils and creams to flour, gummies, and vitamins, of course. They also ship nationwide, so no matter where you are in the On Texas football family, our friends over at Rogue Shop can get their products to you. Just remember to use that code On Texas for that very special discount. Thank you very much to RogueShop.com. That's RogueShop.com. All right, let's getting back to the super chats. Got a bunch of them here, so I'll make sure we get to all of the questions. Daniel says, don't feel like Georgia won as much as UT lost, even if results are the same. Penalties, poor special teams play, and drop passes, we gave it away. Okay, Daniel, can I make the devil's advocate argument here that Georgia has championship DNA, right? They have championship pedigree. The two best games of the year, arguably, for Georgia are against Texas, right? Mm-hmm. They flipped the switch. Championship teams have the ability to flip the switch. Can I make the argument that Texas penalties are because they're playing against better talent? A lot of your holding calls is because that guy's just faster and quicker and bigger and stronger. That they're just better coached, and better coached players execute better. And if you are not focused, then that's when you're out of position. And also big stages. Championship DNA means you've been on the big stage a lot. It means you guys have they played in a lot of SEC title games, a lot of them. They played in championship games, a lot of them, and had to come through. And Texas is just getting there. We're just starting to figure out how to be clutch in critical moments. And for Georgia, like 4th down, fake punt in our own territory, we got that. We've done that. We had to do this before. And Texas, hell, it's our first overtime game. You know what I mean? Like Georgia has been there and done it. So I understand what you're saying about their losses, but there's no doubt Georgia's got champion guys. Go look at what they did in the second half, running the football against the best Russian with a backup quarterback. You know that they won? They had a backup quarterback in there and beat this defense. We've been saying this defense is going to be a top 5 defense, one of the greatest in Texas football history, and a backup quarterback came in there and engineered touchdown drives versus this defense. And you want to tell me Texas lost the game? Come on, guys. We got to give more credit than that. Got to give more credit than that. We do. Come on now. It's a backup quarterback now. It'd be different if it was Carson Beck. Backup quarterback, and the guy couldn't throw. He could throw downfield. He couldn't throw downfield. We got beat on the lines of scrimmage. We lost the lines of scrimmage in this game, both sides of the ball. We can keep blaming the penalties and that self-inflicted wounds. But what about when we play Georgia? Why can't we show up when we play Georgia? What's up with that? If you want to beat a man, you got to beat the man. You got to dethrone the king in their place in Atlanta. You had a chance to do that, and you didn't. I mean, so it's all right. They're just trying to face the reality. We still got some growth. We got some ways to go. You can still win a national title this year, but you want to go through Georgia prior to do it. And you know what? Georgia might get knocked out before that because they played their best ball against Texas because they flipped the switch. But my point is, it was a backup quarterback that did it, and I don't know. I can't say we lost that game when I watched what happened in the second half.
I agree. And that's kind of the hiccup. You know, you prepare so well for Beck that the offense completely switches when you see Stockton come in. A lot of rollouts, a lot of bubble screens, a lot of quick plays. There wasn't a lot in terms of, similarities there from Beck to Stockton, which put a wrench in Texas. And again, that's when you saw some of that run game really get leaky for Texas. But back to the super chat. Rod, this one's for you from Justin Yarborough. Thank you very much for the super chat. What's the recipe against Clemson? And then for me, do we see guys announce for the portal and stay with the team during the playoffs? I thought a few did last year. Great work, fellas. Thank you very much, Justin. Rod, I'll let you start against Clemson because, hey, that's season's not over. Still got some more playoff ball ahead of you. What do you know so far about Clemson and how they match up with Texas?
Yeah, I think Texas matches up really well with Clemson because I don't fear Clemson's skill positions. Klubnik is a playmaker, and you do have to worry about him as a guy that can move around and can run and keep plays alive. That'll be a bit of a challenge. I think this Texas team is going to be hungry. I do think Texas matches up pretty well. Now, in the trenches, Clemson, they actually got some players in the trenches. I don't think they match up DB-wise in their back seven with Texas. I like their front seven, so I like their linebackers against the run, and that may be an issue that we'll see if Texas can run the football effectively versus Clemson. If they can, just like we were saying against Georgia, if you can run the football, then basically the sky's the limit for this Texas offense. But I'm not sure if the running game is going to travel. We thought that was something they figured out versus A&M, but versus Georgia, and maybe it's only Georgia where your running game struggles like that. Maybe against Clemson, that won't be the case. Yeah,
I'm with you. Look, and in terms of the portal, you'll absolutely see Texas players announce for the portal. Some will stick with the team or at least try to. Others will depart immediately. Portal opens up tomorrow. So tomorrow will be the first day of the portal. I'm expecting anywhere of 11 to 13, I think, is the number that I've kind of settled on, pretty similar to last year. Right. Texas already has 2 players enter the portal and will depart from the program. Tomorrow, I bet you see, the first wave of guys saying that their intention is to go elsewhere for their college football players day. But Miracle Martinez has a super chat as well. I was wrong. Special teams did not win that game. And I think that relies solely on the missed kicks. And to that, I agree, right? That's 6 points off the board. Otherwise, look, I did think that for the kickoffs, Georgia didn't return any out. I think Texas had a bit of a mental mistake there with Matthew Golden in the first opening kickoff of the game. You return it. I don't think either your initial upbacks were anticipating a return. You go to the 11-yard line. You move the ball 60 yards, but then you throw a pick, and Georgia gets the ball at the 30. So that was tough. Other than that, look, punt return. You had a 25-yard punt return to set you up to start a drive on Georgia's 42. Yeah, that was pretty good, right? Texas had a big return against Georgia at home earlier in the year, but it was negated by a holding penalty. You didn't have a holding penalty in special teams. So, punt basically is now a coin flip in terms of you either get a really special-looking play or you get one where you say, man, what the hell was that? I thought Silas Bolden actually had a really good return, and the punt unit, for the most part, did well, with the exception of obviously the fake punt, which it's a great play call too. I mean, that was I gotta admit. I mean, maybe your spidey sense should be up at that moment, but first of all, I love the play design, and that was just a hell of a play call at that time. It really was. No, I mean, obviously Texas did not expect it. All right. Aggie _grad_0_%. Thank you for the super chat. Says F the slow developing plays on pressure D's like UGA, quick slants all day, right? Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that's why your outside zone, your wide zone didn't work. Your counters didn't work. I mean, there's such a fast flow, such an aggressive defense. That's why a lot of things that you did to counter their aggression, like what we were talking about earlier, the whip routes and the double moves and the bluff slant or the what they call kind of the stalk slant, that all worked because Georgia is so fast flow. When they see a key, they don't hesitate, and you can make that work against them. So I agree with you. Slow developing plays, unless you're going to do those types of double moves and continuation routes, unless you're going that type of slow developing play. But anything like a wide zone or even your screen game and your a double reverse fake to the tight end mid screen, get out of there with that.
Yeah, it's not gonna work. Not against that defense. So that's why it might be a bad matchup, guys. Like that offense is just a bad matchup for that defense. Burt Reynolds Jr. If you're Sark and have to beat Georgia in the final, How do you, one, manufacture run game, and two, improve red zone effectiveness? I think we just said it. You got to run downhill on them. It's got to hit quick. Your slow developing plays outside wide zone, that is not going to hit. It's got to hit right now.
Yeah.
Boom. So you got to go downhill on.
Some of Texas' best runs were, it wasn't necessarily power because you don't see a lot of true power in the Texas run game. But to your point, right off the A gap, just go. Get the ball and go. Yeah. Don't let the speed of Georgia get upfield and go side to side with you. Just get the ball and go. And how else do you create a run game? Well, you put a quarterback in red zone areas that can run the ball, because we just saw that be a big package for Georgia Tech, which forced 8 overtimes against Georgia.
It was for Georgia. Basically, backup quarterback. That's all he was doing, too. It was the same thing. All right, Juan here says, Sark is going to ride or die with Quinn. We know Arch is a better quarterback. You'll see significant next season how Arch does in offense than Quinn. Sark does not want a quarterback controversy. I agree with the last part there, Juan. He does not want a quarterback controversy. And yes, I think Arch, we all agree, Arch has a higher ceiling than Quinn long term. No doubt about that. No question. Right now, who gives him the best chance to win? I think that's what we Longhorn fans are split on. Who gives him the best chance to win right now? You think it's Arch? I'll say right now, if Sark's going to trust Quinn, I'll trust Sark and trust Quinn. But should he have an Arch package expanded? There's no doubt.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt, Juan. I agree with you on that. Matthew here says, why is Sark married to screens? Slow developing plays and outside zone. They don't work versus Georgia. We have to get north and south passing and running. Great point there, Matthew. We just brought it up. You're right. They got to get north and south. But think about it, guys. That's the heart and soul of Sark's offense, pretty much y'all talking about now. Screen game and the wide zone, the outside zone. That's their bread and butter run play. So we took away their bread and butter run play. Take away the screens, which is also a big part of the offense. You're pretty much taking away, 30% of the offense for Texas. Considered, that's basically, in terms of what I study, that's a lot. And that's I think it's obviously concerning in terms of what's going to juice the run game. Gray Man here says, name a single running back going in the first 3 rounds on the roster, injuries or not.
Ooh.
CJ?
CJ Baxter will be a top 3. He'll be a top 3 round running back. I also really like Christian Clark, and I know the question becomes, what does he look like when he comes back from injury? But you watch you watch how his strengths line up with that of Texas's. He and Jarrett Gibson, I think, eventually could develop into a day 2 kind of guy, maybe a 3rd round pick. The question is, 1, will Texas trust Jarrett Gibson enough next year to kind of take on a role like that? And 2, what will Christian Clark look like when it comes to his health? Because they're both really good football players. And, it starts with the offensive line to give them time to run the football. You don't have that, it doesn't matter how talented your running backs are. Look, Texas bottled up Ollie Gordon a year ago, in which he was a few yards shy of 2,000 on the season. Texas bottled up the Donovan Edwards over at Michigan. If you can't dominate up front, doesn't matter how good your running backs are. And that's kind of where we're sitting again, saying the offensive line has to figure out a way to create some push there. One for you here, Rod. This from Leon. Do you think the loss of Jay Witt, X-Man, AD, and JT has caused his offense to take a step back? Because Jay Witt and JT were his safety blankets. Pretty interesting there, because, look, Gunnar Helm wasn't much involved last night. I know Bobby and Jerry and I talked about it on Rapid Reactions earlier today. You didn't have much Gunnar Helm.
No.
But you did see your best 2-man wide receiver output of the season, with DeAndre Moore and Matthew Golden going for 275 yards and a touchdown combined. What do you think on that?
I think Silas Bowden also has some big plays at wide receiver. Yeah, you're right about that. I just think that the roles we thought a lot of the wide receivers are going to play, we've seen different guys have stretches where they flashed, and we haven't. Matthew Gold has been the one guy all season long that seems to have been consistent. And it seems like maybe DeAndre Moore is the other one. And ironically, they both had these kind of showcase performances. It's hard to say. Hell, Brock Bowers, one of the reasons Carson Beck right now looks so subpar and mediocre, you realize Brock Bowers in the NFL right now is having the greatest rookie season ever for a tight end. Like ever. Like he's like top 5 in receptions, top 5 in yards. Crazy. that's a big reason why I think McConkey's having a good game. So it happens to every quarterback that ends up being a multiple year starter if you lose a lot of weapons. But man, you got Gunnar Helm having a career year. You're as deep as any team in college football at wide receiver. I can't say that can be an excuse for the reasons that shouldn't be an excuse, because you've had so much time together to have chemistry and continuity now, and timing and rhythm within the offense. So if it is an issue now, that's troublesome at this point in the season, because it shouldn't be. Should find you guys. Thanks for that super chat though, Leon. Chris, thank you for the super chat. Chris says Quinn isn't 100%. Can't put on the cape before removing the bandage. Well done there. Compromised mobility shows is Quinn at less than 100%. Really better than healthy arch. Listen, nobody's 100% right now. Everybody's banged and bruised. But man, I think he is healthy enough. I see him move around. I think the mobility is pretty good. Yeah. I'm seeing him throw on the run. I'm seeing him.
Last 2 weeks, he looks good rolling out of the pocket.
Yeah, I don't know if the mobility, CJ, is. I don't know if the mobility is that adversely affected with the injury right now. So, I don't know if I'll go with that, Chris. I know he's not 100%, but I don't know if it's an injury that is responsible for the inconsistent play. Which you guys are criticizing, which all of us are criticizing about, not just you. All of us are critical of.
Look, throw for 360.
He the first half he looked great. It's that damn third quarter. He looked great. He really did. I thought he looked really good in the first half. I know you had the interception, but man, he was putting the ball on the money. I thought Texas just missed their opportunity. And hey, man, you let a team with championship DNA and pedigree stay in the game way too damn long. You had your chance to put the foot in the throat, and you did not. Ambassador of Texas says, Rod B, why no hurry up or empty on Texas football team is A+++. Thank you, Ambassador of Texas. Really, really kind of you. Only 2 empties that I counted, CJ. You did get a 22-yard reception on one of them. So, yes, I thought they should have run more empty formation to spread Georgia out a little bit and hurry up. They went tempo. Sark likes to go tempo after he gets a big play. So usually after you get a big play, they want to go right back to the line. Like he's already got a play ready. So it's situational when they go tempo, but never as like the strategy, one of their main line strategies in the game. But yeah, I thought as a change of pace, maybe Sark should have kind of run a little bit more tempo. Actually, late in the game, I think they were when they got the ball back for that game-tying drive and worked out a little bit for him. So good point there, Ambassador of Texas. Dante here. Dante says, what did you think of Sark going to Wingo on the winning drive instead of Moore and Golden? I didn't understand that. Here's my theory, Dante, because we talked about this. I think Sark believes, going back to the A.D. Mitchell thing, you brought this up too, CJ, at the beginning of the live stream, that A.D. Mitchell in the Washington game, that they went to him late in the red zone. Because Sark is just trying to engineer one-on-one matchups. And I think Sark believes that when he engineers a one-on-one, that Wingo is one of the best guys that can win it. That can win straight up, just win a one-on-one.
From the slot, 100%.
Yep, just straight up just go win a one-on-one. And I think that's maybe what he was thinking down there. Like, no, this guy can go win a one-on-one. And now, Golden is your red zone guy, but they were paying extra attention to Golden, in my opinion. Golden was going off.
Yeah.
So I do think they were rolling a little bit and paying extra eyes on Golden. So that may be the reason, and maybe him and Moore, because both him and Moore were going off, and maybe they were like, hey, it's not as much attention on Wingo. That's a good point. I think he trusts Wingo to win one-on-ones. But they kept throwing to Wingo a lot in this game. Wingo got a lot of targets in this game.
They did. He looked good. I mean, you go for 100 yards on Georgia, you're having a pretty good day.
Yeah. All right, so Oscar here, Oscar Elizondo, thank you, Oscar, for the super chat. Says Quinn takes a lot of blame for things Sark shouldn't be blamed for. Sark should be blamed for penalties in big games that kill drives, O-line crumbling, horrible wide receiver blocking, not playing Archmore, special teams, earn your pay, Sark. This was not a game. Listen, Sark has been great most of the year. We've had very little complaints about Sark's play calling, lack of innovation. He got outcoached in this game. He got outcoached again against Kirby Smart, but he got outcoached against the best coach in college football, arguably. And I expect next time they play him, which may be later on this playoff or maybe next season, I expect for Sark to have a whole different strategy mentality versus Kirby Smart. and because it hasn't worked his first couple of times he's going up against Kirby Smart here at Texas. His formula has been ineffective.
Yeah,
period.
I totally agree. There's 22 starters, about 50, 60 guys that see the field at a time. Quarterback obviously very important, but look, 11 penalties, none were on the quarterback. 6 drops, none of them on the quarterback. It's got to be better all the way around. Texas lost that game as a team last night. They lost it from a coaching staff perspective as well.
Yep.
Frustrating.
Yeah, I thought the offensive line would bounce back. I thought they were going to have a lot of pride and bounce back, and not the case. I mean, Georgia still won the lines of scrimmage. I say not as dominant as last time, but they had 6 sacks.
Yeah.
7 last time, 15 tackles for loss. So yeah. Getting back to the super chat here, Lane. How do they decide officiating for the playoff games? Our penalties in our own conference were bad, but it's hard to see fixing it with a totally different crew. Yeah, I know the officiating was a big issue. I did see the holding calls, and they were holds. I mean, they were holding. I think the issue with Longhorn fans have is, are they calling it equally on the other side? And that's what Sark's biggest complaint was. Yes, Texas may be in violation of these penalties, but is Georgia in violation of them too? Mac always told me players play, coaches coach, officials officiate. We sit here talking officiating, man. We'll be here till midnight. It's it's not something you really can control. You know what I mean? And it doesn't make great content to talk about all day long on the channel. All right, this is Caden. Thank you very much for the super chat. Says thoughts on Bond. Do you sit him prior to the injury? Yeah, prior to the injury, he was basically trending toward being one of your top receivers, if not your top receiver. Listen, if he is hurt, you have enough wide receivers where you don't need to waste reps out there. And he's not a good decoy right now when he's, if he's not the 100% Bond or at least a 90% Bond that has world-class speed, if he's just got above average speed, then that's not special. Doesn't make him special or tough to defend. So yeah, I'd sit him because you got Bolden who's stepping up, making plays. Ryan Wingo, you obviously want to get him the ball more. You got Golden. You got guys. There's no need to put out a hobbled Isaiah Bond.
I'd like to see more of Silas Bolden. I would, and I don't know if this was intended or not, but he only saw 4 snaps on Saturday, and he came up with 2 really big catches for, let's see.
Oh, huge.
36 yards, 20 after the catch, added on a 15-yard personal foul penalty on one of the plays as well. It's 51 yards on 4 snaps, 2 of them going straight to him. I'd like to see more of them. And for those wondering, Isaiah Bond left the stadium last night with a crutch and a boot. So not encouraging in terms of what his immediate future will look like health-wise.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. It's a good point. If Isaiah Bond doesn't have that world-class speed, just not as much of a threat. All right, let's thank our friends at Rogue Shop before we end tonight's live stream. We appreciate our friends over at Rogue Shop. RogueShop.com is where you go check out their great products. Rogue Shop bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. Make sure you use promo code ONTexas for that very special discount. Rogue Shop has it all, from oils and creams to flour and gummies and vitamins as well. Rogue Shop also will ship nationwide, so no matter where you are in the On Texas football family, they can get their products to you. That's On Texas Football. You can go check that out. That is the discount code. You'll get a very special code discount with that as well. Like I said, you can use that code and you can get all their great products, flour, gummies, oils, creams, and vitamins, and more. Check it out all at rogueshop.com. Thank you very much for sponsoring our Sunday night live stream. All right. I believe we're close to the end here, CJ. Appreciate all your hard work as always. Thank you very much to all you folks for the super chats. We couldn't get to all of your questions. Don't worry. You can direct them to the Coffee and Football crew at 8 a.m. tomorrow. They'll be there. And of course, lots of coverage, transfer portal stuff. So what we got tomorrow, CJ, I'm sure you'll have some transfer portal nuggets for the people. Everything that breaks, right? We'll have it here at On Texas Football.
Yeah, everything going on in the portal, we'll have it covered at ontexasfootball.com. Of course, Coffee and Football early morning, talking ball late at night. Rod, you and I and Coach Shipley will have the winning drive at 3:15 tomorrow, as well as a little preview for what Quinn versus Cade Klubnik might look like. That'll be interesting. later on as well. So that'll be on tap for Monday.
Yeah, got a lot coming up. And like I said, anything that breaks, just keep it tuned here on OnTexasFootball.com or to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. Thank you to Rogue Shop for sponsoring our Sunday night live stream. Go to RogueShop.com. Thank you, CJ. We appreciate everything that you do. We also appreciate all of you guys out there for your participation and for all of your super chats tonight. Really can't thank you enough. All right, until next time, remember tomorrow you got Coffee and Football at 8 a.m. Like CJ said, you got 3:15 winning drive. Those will be our live streams for tomorrow. And until next time, hook 'em horns.
Y'all have a good one. Happy Sunday.